C12 Coordination and Response PG 234-202405051112.1 The Human Nervous System PG 236-212.1 The Human Nervous System 236-1 Animals need fast and efficient communication systems between their receptors and effectors. 2. The way in which receptors detect stimuli, and then pass information on to effectors, is called coordination. 3. There are two ways of sending information from receptors to effectors. I. Nervous system uses electrical impulse to send message. 2. Endocrine system use hormones to send message. 3. Neurons 236-1 The human nervous system is made of special cells called neurons. 4. I. Cell structure Neuron has the same basic parts as any animal cell. Each has nucleus, cytoplasm, and a cell membrane. 2. Function Their structure is specially adapted to be able to carry electrical signals very quickly. 3. Axon The longest fiber in a neuron is called an axon. It can be more than a meter long. This means that less time is wasted transferring the impulse from one cell to another. The axon is insulated by a fatty sheath with small uninsulated sections along it, called nodes. This means that the electrical impulse does not travel down the whole axon, but jumps from one node to the next. Myelin sheath insulate the nerve fibers, so that they can carry these impulses much faster. 4. Dendrite Their cell body contains many extensions of shorter fiber called dendrites. It pick up electrical signals from other neurons lying nearby. This means they can connect to many other neurons and receive impulses from them, forming a network for easy communication. V-signal These signals are called nerve impulses. The signal passes to the cell body, then along axon, which might pass it to another neuron. Neurons 2365 The nervous system is composed of more than 100 billion cells known as neurons. A neuron is a cell in the nervous system whose function it is to receive and transmit information. Neurons are made up of three major parts: I. Cell body. 2. Dendrite. 3. Axon. Cell body/soma contains the nucleus of the cell and keeps the cell alive. Dendrites collects information from other cells and sends the information to the soma. Axon passes messages away from the cell body to other neurons, muscles, or glands. Neurons 236-6 The three main types of neuron: sensory neuron long and have a cell body branching off the middle of the axon. It carry impulses from sense organs to the CNS, brain or spinal cord. Relay neuron short and have a small cell body at one end with many dendrites branching off it. It is found inside the CNS and connects sensory and motor neurons. Motor neurons are long and have a large cell body at one end with long dendrites branching off it. It carry impulses from the CNS to effectors, muscles or glands. Sense organs: eyes, nose, CNS effectors, muscles and glands. Sensory neuron motor neuron direction of messenger travel neurons, communication, 236-7-1. The nervous system operates using an electrochemical process, using electricity and chemicals. 2. Within the neuron, when a signal is received by the dendrites, it is transmitted to the soma in the form of an electrical signal, and, if the signal is strong enough, it may then be passed on to the axon and then to the terminal buttons. 3. An important aspect of the action potential is that it operates in an all-or-nothing manner. What this means is that the neuron either fires completely, such that the action potential moves all the way down the axon, or it does not fire at all. Thus neurons can provide more energy to the neurons down the line by firing faster but not by firing more strongly. 4. Furthermore, the neuron is prevented from repeated firing by the presence of a refractory period, a brief time after the firing of the axon in which the axon cannot fire again because the neuron has not yet returned to its resting potential. Neurons, communication, 236-8-5. Neurons are separated by junction areas known as synapses, areas where the terminal buttons at the end of the axon of one neuron nearly, but don't quite, touch the dendrites of another. 6. If the signal reaches the terminal buttons, they are signaled to emit chemicals known as neurotransmitters, which communicate with other neurons across the spaces between the cells, known as synapses. 7. When the electrical impulse from the action potential reaches the end of the axon, it signals the terminal buttons to release neurotransmitters into the synapse. 8. The synapses provide a remarkable function because they allow each axon to communicate with many dendrites in neighboring cells. Because a neuron may have synaptic connections with thousands of other neurons, the communication links among the neurons in the nervous system allow for a highly sophisticated communication system. Neurons, communication, 236.99. A neurotransmitter is a chemical that relays signals across the synapses between neurons. 10 neurotransmitters travel across the synaptic space between the terminal button of one neuron and the dendrites of other neurons, where they bind to the dendrites in the neighboring neurons. 11. Furthermore, different terminal buttons release different neurotransmitters, and different dendrites are particularly sensitive to different neurotransmitters. The dendrites will emit the neurotransmitters only if they are the right shape to fit in the receptor sites on the receiving neuron. 12. For this reason, the receptor sites and neurotransmitters are often compared to a lock and key. 13. Neurotransmitters that are not accepted by the receptor sites must be removed from the synapse in order for the next potential stimulation of the neuron to happen. This process occurs in part through the breaking down of the neurotransmitters by enzymes. Neurons, communication, 236.10. The synapse in neuroscience. A synapse refers to the junction between two neurons, where information is transmitted from one neuron to another. When the nerve impulse reaches the terminal button, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters into the synapse. The neurotransmitters fit into receptors on the receiving dendrites in the manner of a lock and key. The central nervous system 237.11.1. The human nervous system consists of the central nervous system, CNS, the brain and the spinal cord 2. Peripheral nervous system, PNs, all of the nerves in the body 2. It allows us to make sense of our surroundings and respond to them 2. Coordinate and regulate body functions 3. Information is sent through the nervous system as nerve impulses, electrical signals that pass along nerve cells known as neurons. 4. A bundle of neurons is known as a nerve. Reflex arcs 237.12. Two types of action controlled by the human nervous system are voluntary responses. 1. A voluntary response is one where you make a conscious decision to carry out a particular action, therefore it starts with your brain. 2. An example is reaching out to pick up a cup of coffee. 3. Involuntary actions are usually ones which are essential to basic survival and are rapid, whereas voluntary responses often take longer as we consider what the consequences might be before doing it. Reflex responses. 1. An involuntary, or reflex, response does not involve the brain as the coordinator of the reaction and you are not aware you have completed it until after you have carried it out. 2. This is an automatic and rapid response to a stimulus such as touching something sharp or hot. 3. As it does not involve the brain, a reflex response is quicker than any other type of nervous response. This helps to minimize the damage to the body. 4. Reflex actions are automatic, fast, protective. 5. From an evolutionary perspective, reflex action has played an important part in ensuring the survival of organisms as it has enabled quick reactions to certain situations where an organism's life could be at stake. Reflex arcs 237.13. Two types of action controlled by the human nervous system are feature voluntary action, involuntary action, nature, conscious thought, make decision about making action. Free will, consciously control skeletal muscles, does not involve thought, not under the control of the will, cannot control the activities. Examples: if we want to ask question, we raise our hands involving skeletal muscle, e.g. knee jerk, smooth muscles, e.g. peristalsis, cardiac muscles, e.g. pumping of the heart, roll respond with the benefit of experience, respond quickly to avoid danger, speed of action, slow response, needs time to think before an action is carried out. Rapid response. Response to the same stimulus. The same stimulus may produce various responses. E.g. when you are hungry, you may decide to eat or not to eat, or just need to drink water. The same stimulus always results in the same response, stereotyped response, e.g. the knee-jerk reflex. Reflex arcs 237-14-1. A reflex arc is a neural pathway that controls an automatic, unconscious, and rapid response to a stimulus. It is responsible for the reflexes that allow us to quickly respond to potential dangers, such as pulling our hand away from a hot surface or quickly contracting our muscles to avoid falling without conscious thought. 2. It helps us to protect ourselves from harm and maintain our balance and stability. 3. The reflex arc consists of 5 main components. I receptor. This is the sensory nerve ending that detects the stimulus, such as a change in temperature, pressure, or stretch. 2. Sensory neuron. This is the nerve cell that carries the sensory information from the receptor to the spinal cord. 3. Interneuron. This is a nerve cell located in the spinal cord that receives and processes sensory information. 4. Motor neuron. This is the nerve cell that carries the processed information from the interneuron to the effector, such as a muscle. V. Effector. This is the structure that responds to the nerve signal, such as a muscle or gland, and produces the reflex response. Reflex arcs 237-15I. The pin, stimulus, is detected by a pain/pressure/touch receptor in the skin. 2 receptors sends electrical impulses through sensory neuron to the spinal cord, the coordinator. 3 Electrical impulse is passed on to relay neuron in the spinal cord. Relay neuron connects to motor neuron and passes the impulse on. 4 Motor neuron carries impulse to a muscle in the leg, effector. V. The muscle will contract and pull the foot up and away from the sharp object, response. The reflex pathway. Knee-jerk reflex, sudden kicking movement of the lower leg in response to a sharp tap on the patellar tendon, which lies just below the kneecap. Reflex arcs 237-16. Reflex arcs 237-17. Reflex is an involuntary and sudden response to stimuli. The reflex arc is a critical component of the nervous system that enables us to quickly and unconsciously respond to stimuli in order to protect ourselves and maintain stability. Understanding the reflex arc is important for those studying anatomy, physiology, and medicine. Reflex arcs 237-18-1. What is reflex action? 2. Briefly state the event that precedes a stimulus in organisms. 3. What is a reflex arc? Reflex action is a sudden and involuntary response to stimuli. It helps organisms to quickly adapt to an adverse circumstance that could have the potential to cause bodily harm or even death. Pulling our hands away immediately after touching a hot or cold object is a classic example of a reflex action. The first event begins with the receptor detecting a stimulus from a sensory organ. The stimulus could be in the form of pressure, temperature, or chemicals. This is followed by the sensory neuron sending a signal to the relay neuron. The relay neuron then sends the signal to the motor neuron. The motor neuron sends a signal to the organ or a cell that acts to the stimuli called the effector. Finally, the effector produces an instantaneous response, such as a knee-jerk reaction. A reflex arc is a pathway that controls a reflex. Reflex arcs 237-19-1. What are examples of reflex action? 2. The knee-jerk can be used to check for. Reflexes of these types are usually involved in maintaining homeostasis. Many reflexes of placental mammals appear to be innate. They are hereditary and are a common feature of the species and often of the genus. Reflexes include not only such simple acts as chewing, swallowing, blinking, the knee jerk, salivation at the sight of food, and the scratch reflex, but also stepping, standing, and mating. Built up into complex patterns of many coordinated muscular actions, reflexes form the basis of much instinctive behavior in animals. Exaggeration or absence of the reaction suggests that there may be damage to the central nervous system. Exercises, 20 exercises, 21 exercises, 22 12.2 sense organs PG 241 23 sense organs 241 24 1. Receptors are groups of specialized cells. They detect a change in the environment and stimulate electrical impulses in response. 2 sense organs contain groups of receptors that respond to specific stimuli. 3 Once the receptor cell in the sense organ has been stimulated, it generates an electrical impulse. 4 This is passed on to a sensory neuron which carries the impulse to the central nervous system. 5 Here a response will be decided on and the impulse will be passed to a motor neuron, via a relay neuron. 6 The motor neuron carries the impulse to the effector, muscle or gland. The effector carries out the response. Sense organs 241-25 The structure of the eye 241-26 The eye is a sense organ containing receptor cells that are sensitive to light, rod cells, and color, cone cells. The eye is filled with fluid, which helps to keep it in shape. First layer, sclera 3th layer, retina second layer, choroid conjunctiva The structure of the eye 241-27 The external structure of an eye The internal structure of an eye sclera It is a white visible portion. It is made up of dense connective tissue and protects the inner parts. 2 Conjunctiva It lines the sclera and is made up of stratified squamous epithelium. It keeps our eyes moist and clear and provides lubrication by secreting mucus and tears. It protects the eyes from debris, dust, and infection-causing microorganisms. 3 Cornea It is the transparent, anterior, or front part of our eye, which covers the pupil and the iris. The main function is to refract the light along with the lens. 4 Iris It is the pigmented, colored portion of the eye, visible externally. The main function of the iris is to control the diameter of the pupil according to the light source. V pupil It is the small aperture located in the center of the iris. It allows light to enter and focus on the retina. Eye lens It is a transparent, biconvex, lens of an eye. The lens is attached to the ciliary body by ligaments. The lens along with the cornea refracts light so that it focuses on the retina. 2 Retina It is the innermost layer of the eye. It is light sensitive and acts as a film of a camera. 3 layers of neural cells are present in them, they are ganglion, bipolar and photoreceptor cells. It converts the image into electrical nerve impulses for the visual perception by the brain. 3 Optic nerve It is located at the posterior portion of the eyes. The optic nerves carry all the nerve impulses from the retina to the human brain for perception. 4 Aqueous humor It is a watery fluid present between the cornea and the lens. It nourishes the eye and keeps it inflated. V Vitreous humor It is a transparent, jelly-like substance present between the lens and the retina. It contains water, 99%, collage, proteins, etc. The main function of vitreous humor is to protect the eyes and maintain its spherical shape. The structure of the eye 241-28 1. The eye is a sense organ containing receptor cells that are sensitive to light, rod cells, and color, cone cells. 2 Each eye is set in a bony socket in the skull, which protects the eye. Only the very front of the eye is not surrounded by bone. 3 The eye is filled with fluid, which helps to keep it in shape. 4 The front of the eye is covered by a thin, transparent membrane called conjunctiva, which helps to protect the parts behind it. Conjunctivitis is this membrane becomes sore and inflamed. 5 The surface of the eye is always kept moist by a fluid made in tear glands. This fluid contains an enzyme called lysozymes, which can kill bacteria. 6 The fluid is washed across your eye by your eyelids when you blink. The eyelids, eyebrows, and eyelash also help to stop dirt from landing on the surface of your eyes. Bony sockets in skull The structure of the eye 241-29 The blind spot at the point where the optic nerve joins the retina, there are no light-sensitive rod and cone cells on that part of the retina. Light falling onto that part of the retina will not result in an image being detected. The brain fills in from surrounding light so we don't see a black hole where no light has fallen. This causes a blind spot, where we cannot detect an object in our peripheral vision even if it is there. The pupil reflex This is a reflex action carried out to protect the retina from damage in bright light and protect us from not seeing objects in dim light. In dim light the pupil dilates, widens, in order to allow as much light into the eye as possible. In bright light the pupil constricts, narrows, in order to prevent too much light entering the eye and damaging the retina. Rods and cones 242-31. The closer together the receptor cells are, the clearer the image the brain can produce. The part of retina where the receptor cells are packed most closely together is called fovea. This is part of retina where light is focused when you look straight at an object. 2. The retina also contains the nerves that tell the brain what the photoreceptors are seeing. There are two types of photoreceptors involved in sight, rods and cones. 3. Rods, which are sensitive to dim light. Rod cells are found all over the retina. Other than the area where the optic nerve attaches to the retina, there are no light-sensitive cells at all in this area, and so it is known as the blind spot. Rods work at very low levels of light. We use these for night vision because only a few bits of light, photons, can activate a rod. Rods don't help with color vision, which is why at night, we see everything in a grayscale. The human eye has over 100 million rod cells. 4. Cones, which distinguish between different colors in bright light. There are 3 types of cone cells which are sensitive to different colors of light, red, blue, and green. Cones require a lot more light and they are used to see color. The human eye only has about 6 million cones. Many of these are packed into the fovea, a small pit in the back of the eye that helps with the sharpness or detail of images. Rods and cones 242-31-5. The fovea contains almost entirely cones, packed tightly together. When we look directly at an object, we use our cones to produce a sharp image, in color. Rods are found further out on the retina and less tightly packed. They show us a less detailed image. The fovea is a special area where the proximal cells somata are displaced to allow light to be directly absorbed. This is also the focal point of the image and the region where the majority of cone cells are concentrated. We constantly move our eyes to view the foveal image. 6 other animals have different numbers of each cell type. Animals that have to see in the dark have many more rods than humans have. Rods and cones in the eye. Rods and cones 242-32. Light moves through the eye and is absorbed by rods and cones at the back of the eye. The retina contains a sheet of photoreceptors. The visual image is focused on the retina with minimal distortion, by refraction through the cornea and lens, see optics. Rods and cones 242-33. Photoreceptors, rods and cones. These are unevenly distributed across the retina. The density of the receptors is shown in degrees of visual angle relative to the position of the fovea for the left eye. The cone receptors are concentrated in the fovea. The rod photoreceptors are absent from the fovea and reach their highest density 10 to 20 degrees peripheral to the fovea. No photoreceptors are present in the blind spot. Rods and cones 242-34-7. We have 3 types of cones. 8. Even though each cone is most sensitive to a specific color of light, where the line peaks, they also can detect other colors, shown by the stretch of each curve. 9. Since the 3 types of cones are commonly labeled by the color at which they are most sensitive, blue, green, and red, you might think other colors are not possible. 10. But it is the overlap of the cones and how the brain integrates the signals sent from them that allows us to see millions of colors. For example, the color yellow results from green and red cones being stimulated while the blue cones have no stimulation. The iris 243-35-1. The front of the lens is a circular piece of tissue called the iris. This is the colored part of your eye. The iris contains pigments, which absorb light and stop it passing through. 2. In the middle of iris is a gap called pupil. 3. The size of pupil can be adjusted. The wider the pupil is, the more light can get through to the retina. 4. In high light intensity, the iris closes in, and makes the pupil small. This stops too much light getting in and damaging the retina. 5. In low light intensity, the iris pulls back from the pupil, so that the pupil becomes larger. This allows more light to reach the retina. The iris 243-36. The pupil reflex 1. The pupil reflex is an example of a pair of antagonistic muscle groups acting together. 2. They work together to regulate the amount of light entering the eye. 3. The muscles that work antagonistically are the radial muscles and the circular muscles of the eye. When one set of muscles contracts, the other relaxes. Pupil constricting, pupil dilating, the iris 243-37 adjusting the focus 244-38 accommodation, the function of the eye in focusing on near and distant objects. The way the lens brings about fine focusing is called accommodation. The lens is elastic and its shape can be changed when the suspensory ligaments attached to it become tight or loose. The changes are brought about by the contraction or relaxation of the ciliary muscles. When an object is close up, the ciliary muscles contract, the ring of muscle decreases in diameter. 2. This causes the suspensory ligaments to loosen. 3. This stops the suspensory ligaments from pulling on the lens, which allows the lens to become fatter. 4. Light is refracted more when an object is far away, the ciliary muscles relax, the ring of muscle increases in diameter. 2. This causes the suspensory ligaments to tighten. 3. The suspensory ligaments pull on the lens, causing it to become thinner. 4. Light is refracted less, adjusting the focus 24-439 when an object is close up. When an object is close up, 1. The ciliary muscles contract, the ring of muscle decreases in diameter. 2. This causes the suspensory ligaments to loosen. 3. This stops the suspensory ligaments from pulling on the lens, which allows the lens to become fatter. 4. Light is refracted more. Adjusting the focus 244-40 when an object is far away. When an object is far away, 1. The ciliary muscles relax, the ring of muscle increases in diameter. 2. This causes the suspensory ligaments to tighten. 3. The suspensory ligaments pull on the lens, causing it to become thinner. 4. Light is refracted less, adjusting the focus 244-41 staring at your hand right in front of your eye will make your eyes feel tight and tired after a few seconds. This is because the ciliary muscles are contracted. Staring at an object far away feels relaxing and comfortable because the ciliary muscles are relaxed. Adjusting the focus 244-42 eye accommodation is the act of physiologically making adjustment to the crystalline lens elements to vary the power of refraction and bring into sharp focus close and far objects. The eye accommodates by changing the lens curvature, which is performed by the ciliary muscles. They relax the suspensory ligament fibers, narrow the ciliary body diameter, and allow relaxation of the lens, forming a more convex shape. The more convex the lens are, the stronger their light refractive power and focuses diverging light rays onto the retina, allowing good focus on close objects. 12.3 Hormones PG 246-43 12.3 Hormones 246-44 1. The endocrine system produces and secretes hormones. 2. The hormones are molecules travel in the blood and are used for signaling in the body. 3. They are produced in a specialized glands, before being excreted into the blood, where they travel to target organs and cause a change in the cells. 4. Classification of hormones. Steroid hormones. These are lipid-soluble molecules that can pass through cell membranes and bind to intracellular receptors. Examples include estrogen and testosterone. 2. Peptide and protein hormones. These are water-soluble and bind to receptors on the cell surface. Examples include insulin and growth hormone. Define hormone. Hormone is a chemical substance, produced by a gland, carried by the blood, which alters the activity of one or more specific target organs. 12.3 Hormones 246-45 The body produces a range of different chemical hormones that travel in the bloodstream and affect a number of different organs or cells in the body. The pituitary gland in the brain is known as a master gland. It secretes several hormones into the blood in response to the body's condition, such as blood water levels. These hormones can also act on other glands to stimulate the release of different types of hormones and bring about effects. 12.3 Hormones 246-46 Gland, location, hormones that it secretes function of hormone pituitary gland, situated at the base of the brain, termed master gland, growth hormone, GH, stimulates growth and cell reproduction. Antidiuretic hormone, ADH, and oxytocin regulate water balance and uterine contractions, respectively. Thyroid gland, found in the neck, surrounding the trachea, thyroxine, T4, and triiodothyronine, T3, increase the basal metabolic rate, affect protein synthesis. Parathyroid glands, small glands located behind the thyroid, parathyroid hormone, PTH, increases blood calcium levels by stimulating calcium release from bones and decreasing calcium excretion in the kidneys. Adrenal glands, situated on top of the kidneys, adrenaline and noradrenaline increase heart rate, blood pressure, and energy supply. Pancreas, behind the stomach, insulin lowers blood glucose levels by facilitating cellular glucose uptake. Glucagon increases blood glucose levels by stimulating glycogen breakdown in the liver. Ovaries in females. Estrogen and progesterone regulate the menstrual cycle, support pregnancy, and develop female secondary sexual characteristics. Testes in males. Testosterone involved in sperm production, development of male secondary sexual characteristics, and libido. 12.3 Hormones. 247. There are important differences between nervous and hormonal control. Nervous hormonal type of signal. Electrical, chemical at synapses, chemical transmission of signal by nerve cells, neurons, by the bloodstream. Effectors. Muscles or glands target cells in particular tissues. Type of response. Muscle contraction or secretion. Chemical change. Speed of response very rapid, slower. Duration of response short, until nerve impulses stop, long, until hormone is broken down. 12.4 Coordination in plants. PG 247-48. 12.4 Coordination in plants. 247-49. 1. Troism are responses by part of a plant toward of away from a stimulus coming from one direction. The movement is always a growth movement. 2. Like animals, plants are able to respond to their environment, although usually with much slower responses than those of animals. 3. In general, plants respond to stimuli by changing their rate or direction of growth. They may grow either towards or away from a stimulus. These responses are called troisms. 4. 2 important stimuli for plants are light and gravity. 12.4 Coordination in plants. 247. 50 Shoots normally grow towards light. Roots do not usually respond to light, but a few grow away from it. Shoots tend to grow away from the pull of gravity. Roots normally grow towards it. Auxin 252-51. 1. The hormones that regulate plant growth are called auxins. To note that auxins in the shoot stimulate cell elongation, by stimulating the absorption of water, forcing cells to expand, and that auxins in the root slow down cell growth. 3. Auxins are produced in the shoot tips of growing plants. These regions are called meristems. More specifically, a meristem is a region of cell division in a plant, but I don't think you'll have to know this term at the IGS level. All you need to know for your exam is that auxins are produced in shoot tips. 4. Auxin spreads through the plant from the shoot tip, however, its distribution throughout the plant is unequal. This is because of its response to light and gravity. Auxins are plant growth substances, produced by the shoot and root tips of growing plants. Auxins in the shoot stimulate cell growth by the absorption of water. Auxins in the root slow down the cell growth. Auxin 252-52 Auxins in phototroism. If a shoot is exposed to light from one side, one more auxins are moving in the shaded side, from the tip of the shoot. 2. On this side, cells are stimulated to absorb more water, plant grows more. 3. Shoot bends toward the light. 4. This is called positive phototroism. If a root is exposed to light in the absence of gravity, one more auxins are moving in the shaded side, from the tip of the root. 2. On this side, cells are stimulated to absorb less water, plant grows less. 3. Root bends away from the light. 4. This is called negative phototroism. Auxin 252-53 auxins in geotropism. If a shoot is placed horizontally in the absence of light 1. Auxins accumulate on the lower side of the shoot, due to gravity. 2 cells on the lower side grow more quickly. 3. The shoot bends upwards. 4. This is called negative geotropism. If a root is placed horizontally in the absence of light 1. Auxins accumulate on the lower side of the shoot, due to gravity. 2 cells on the lower side grow more slowly. 3. The shoot bends downwards. 4. This is called positive geotropism. Auxin 252-54 Darwin did the first experiments to study the effects of auxin. Shoots and roots that have their tips removed will not respond to light or gravity because the part that produces auxins has been cut off. Shoots that have their tips covered with opaque material grow straight upwards when exposed to one-sided light, because the auxin distribution is not influenced by the light. Auxin 252-55 Effects of weed killers. Weed killers, herbicide, are synthetic plant hormones, similar to auxins. If these chemicals are sprayed onto plants, they can cause rapid, uncontrolled growth and respiration, resulting in the death of the plant. Some plant species are more sensitive than others to synthetic plant hormones, so weed killers can be selective. Many weed killers kill only broad-leaved plants, dicotyledons, leaving grasses, monocotyledons, unharmed.